The government says it wants to shift power from Westminster to the education front line, but that involves what the recent white paper calls more effective school accountability. So what do you need to know about these changes to the way schools are monitored and held to account? Schools have grown used to being judged against centrally set targets, but the coalition government wants to dismantle what it calls the apparatus of central control and replace it with, in its words, more direct accountability to parents and taxpayers. Schools will have to publish more information, will face closer scrutiny of their teaching, and will be judged against minimum academic standards. So they'll have to publish data on things like attainment by subject and over time, attendance rates and class sizes. They must tell parents about the school's phonics scheme, its arrangements for setting pupils, and how it's spending the pupil premium. And all this must be published in an accessible online format to allow easy comparison with similar neighbouring schools.
I think in some ways it might even be better to what we currently have, to be perfectly frank, because some of the headline statistics we have, they don't really show you exactly what is happening in a school. I suppose the concern that some heads have had, head teachers that I've spoken to, is will parents understand that plethora of information? Will they know what is statistically significant or not?
The government, of course, is specifying which sort of information schools will have to publish, things like phonics and whether you set pupils. Isn't that just another way, like targets, of exerting influence over what schools do?
I think it will. I think people are always influenced and controlled by what is going to be published about their schools, and already people are gearing up for the English Baccalaureate because they know that is going to be published. Hopefully it won't lead to quite the same gaming in the system that I think has currently happened, but yes, I think the effect will be that you won't have to do things, but you will feel obliged to do things in a particular way. Yeah, I think that's probably true.
The White Paper also outlines changes to Ofsted, whose remit will be narrowed to focus inspections on the core of teaching and learning, with more time spent on lesson observation and greater targeting of weaker schools. So the current 27 headings for school inspection will be reduced to just 4. These will be the level of pupil achievement, the quality of teaching in the school, the strength of the leadership and management, and the behaviour and safety of the pupils. These changes will come into effect from autumn 2011.
The idea behind this is about making sure that inspectors are really able to focus on what is considered to be important, and that's the lessons, the teaching, the leadership, rather than looking at areas which are seen to be more about welfare.
We are not against the idea that Ofsted has a more narrow inspection remit. I mean, the idea that Ofsted inspected things like community cohesion was ridiculous, and we've always thought it's been ridiculous. So we will have to see what we know. The 4 areas which Ofsted are going to be inspecting, including the quality of teaching and learning and pupil behaviour. It'll be interesting to see how the framework is developed and what effect it will have.
What we're really trying to move away from, I think, is a system which has become incredibly tick box focused, very prescriptive in terms of what the inspectors have to look at, a disproportionate emphasis perhaps on the well-being element rather than actually being able to look at the education element, and that's why there's been a move towards slimming it down.
The White Paper also says it'll reform and sharpen school-by-school performance tables, making them more transparent. So out will go the contextual value-added measure, which the government says is hard for parents to understand and entrenches low expectations for children because of their background. Instead, the tables will focus on raw attainment in exam results, staying on rates and university and job destinations. There'll be a focus on how far pupils have progressed while at the school. And with the pupil premium, there'll be new measures showing how well poorer children are doing in the basics.
What the government appears to want to do is to prevent schools from, in inverted commas, manipulating their 5A to C score through the subject combinations that they have chosen, particularly through the equivalence of vocational subjects. And in terms of the overall curriculum quality, 14 to 16, there's some merit in that. What what our expectations at 16 should be shaped by is a sense of what we want all children to emerge from compulsory education knowing, understanding and being able to do.
The final piece of the accountability jigsaw is a new minimum or floor standard for every school, below which intervention will be triggered. These standards will be set higher than in the past, and recognising that some schools receive children with low prior attainment, they will cover an expected standard of both raw attainment and of progress made by pupils. So secondary schools will be below the floor if fewer than 35% of pupils achieve 5 good GCSEs, including English, maths and eventually science, and if fewer pupils than the national average make good progress from Key Stage 2 to 4. Primary school pupils will be below the floor if fewer than 60% of pupils achieve level 4 in English and maths, and if fewer pupils than average make good progress between Key Stage 1 and 2.
Well, raising the floor is obviously a significant issue because, I mean, one of Michael Gove's aspirations is to have a fairer and more equal society, and he's absolutely right about that. But one of the ways that we do that is by reducing poverty. This is not an excuse. We don't go into schools and say, well, we're going to lower our aspirations because these children are poor. We absolutely don't do that. But we do advance it as a reason.
The government may be abolishing many of the old centrally set targets for schools, but it will require much greater transparency. And according to some, that could turn out to be just a different way of exerting influence and control over schools.